Vijay entered the CBI office in central Delhi a little past 11 a.m. this morning, and he came out closer to 7 p.m. So 6.5 hours plus of full-on grilling about what was happening in Karur. This was in connection with the Karur stampede that happened back in October, in which 41 people were killed. Clearly, Vijay and his party owe an explanation for what led to the deaths of those innocent people. But the bigger question is, why is this probe happening now? Barely a couple of months left before Tamil Nadu gets into election campaign mode. Does this warrant a criminal inquiry at this stage? We'll also be getting you a number of questions that the CBI has asked Vijay. He has been asked to appear. A new date has not been shared, but it will likely happen after the Pongal celebrations, which of course is the biggest festival in the state. Is this purely political? Is this to try and checkmate Vijay just before the Tamil Nadu elections? Or is this going to have the opposite effect? Is this going to help Vijay play the sympathy card and make his image, his political image, larger than what it already is in the state of Tamil Nadu? So it was a day of action-packed drama in the national capital as the Tamil star was put through the ringer by the CBI, asked all sorts of questions about what happened in Karur and why him and his political party have still not taken responsibility for the deaths of those 41 people. The charges against Vijay paint a picture of serious lapses and questionable conduct in the immediate aftermath of what happened in Karur. First, investigators are looking into unexplained delays and failures in his arrival at the rally venue. Remember, he came a good 6 hours late, and that raised concerns about the preparedness by his organizers, the accountability or the lack of it by the people who were organizing that rally in Karur. Second, there are also allegations of gross negligence and poor crowd management, which may have contributed to the chaos that was seen on the ground. Vijay is also accused of leaving the rally site right after the stampede at a time when leadership and responsibility was most needed. In fact, within an hour or so, he left from Karur, went to the airport and headed back to Chennai. In fact, it took a whole month before he could actually meet the individuals who were affected, the families of the victims. In fact, him and his party claim that they requested the Tamil Nadu police on a number of occasions to try and allow him to travel back to Karur, but they never got the requisite permission. Fourth, critics also say that he showed no sense of responsibility or even remorse in the aftermath of the tragedy. And finally, he faces flack for prioritizing publicity over condolence, focusing on image management instead of addressing the suffering of the victims and their families. Let's listen in.
This is not fair procedure. And our leader, the Chief Minister, Mr. M.K. Stalin, has pointed out how, like the troika of CBI, ED and the Income Tax Department, CBFC is also been weaponized by the BJP to target political opponents.
This case has been transferred by the Supreme Court. When that is being so, it is natural process, legal process, that any person who is involved in the incident has to be investigated. Okay, so now the DMK are imagining that whatever is happening, they are thinking that it is because of BJP.
So today is not the only day of questioning. He's in fact been asked to appear before the CBI for a second time. His request to appear after Pongal has been accepted by the agency. But here's what Vijay was asked by the CBI in the 6 hours plus of questioning that he was subject to at the CBI's headquarters in central Delhi. They questioned Vijay in detail, trying to establish responsibility and the sequence of events that led to the stampede. They first asked him to explain in his own words the sequence of events that led to the stampede. The CBI then sought to know whether he was aware of just how congested the venue was and the size of the crowd that was expected to attend. Another key question focused on why there was a delay in his arrival at the venue. He arrived there a good 6 hours later, and whether or not that delay had contributed to the poor crowd management. Vijay was also asked if he was aware of the announcement made about a missing child that happened during the event. Investigators further questioned whether he knew about the police lathi charge that was used to control the crowd. Finally, the CBI also asked him why he chose to leave the venue right after the tragedy instead of staying back and overseeing the rescue and relief efforts.
After 6.5 hours of questioning, Tamil superstar Vijay has finally left the CBI headquarters. He was put through extensive questioning where he was asked about the Karur stampede, questions like what led to his delayed arrival, which made the crowd restive. He was also asked about why he suddenly left the Karur rally ground or the venue of his address, cutting short his speech in between. So what led him to finally leave the venue in such a huff? There were also, video evidence that CBI had of an announcement being made while Vijay was present about a child going missing, and also water bottle is getting thrown at the restive crowd. There are two versions that CBI is checking. Vijay's party's version is that the mismanagement was by the police, that they deliberately did not manage the crowd well. The version from the police is that they repeatedly issued warning that the venue was too small for the number of people who had gathered, and therefore Vijay and his team should postpone or cancel the event. Vijay should not move further with the event. Police officials say that these warnings were not paid heed to, and therefore the responsibility lies with the organizers. I'll show you this little child here. Just come here once. I just want to show you how the Vijay supporters are wearing these t-shirts and coming to CBI headquarters. And there are children, there are youngsters, there are men and women who have all carried Vijay's poster.
All right, I want to go across for a quick face-off on this. Mr. Kalyana Raman is leader of the BJP in Tamil Nadu. Nandakumar, political analyst, joining us. Mr. Kalyana Raman, the TVK and Vijay's party and even the DMK has been saying that the reason why the CBI is inquiring and called him for questioning today, this close to the elections, is to try and make him into some kind of a political figure, in some kind of a political martyr. After all, this happened 3 months ago. Why are you bringing this up now? And this is all being done at the behest of the BJP and the central government.
It is very simple to understand that there has been an event, and subsequently the High Court had ordered for an SIT, and subsequently there was a case that went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court had ordered for the CBI inquiry, and the process has to take place. It takes its own course of time. On the contrary, we have to see that the ED had written a couple of letters for filing of FIR against two of the ministers, and nothing is happening in Tamil Nadu, even though the letter was written 5 months back. So the DMK making, rather questioning CBI, calling Vijay here for an inquiry is just simply absurd.
Fact remains is the reason why he's been called now is to make him larger than what he already is politically?
See, the DMK is already on the losing streak with a huge anti-incumbency. We all know that. When that being the case, it is a simple process flow or a procedural thing that is happening. For that, attributing anything political, whether it is good or bad or negative or positive, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
Okay.
The political system of DMK has been so immature that they want to talk whatever they want to talk without having any sense in it, and that has been their history for the last almost 8 years now since their existence.
Why should anybody not face the law, whether you're a superstar, whether you're a politician, whether you're an ordinary person? Vijay needs to come clean and explain to the authorities why what happened in Karur, cannot go unpunished. Was he aware of it? Were his party members aware of it? Was it poor crowd management? These are legitimate questions. He should answer.
Of course, nobody is above the law. And even Vijay has not asked for any exception from the questioning. He appeared and he has not asked for any concession to come on a different date than what they have proposed. So this clearly shows that Vijay respects the law. He believes in the procedure of law. So that is why even on the first summon, without any requisition or without any demand, he gone there to appear. So this is a clear-cut evidence that Vijay abide by the law all the times. And even during the Karur incident also, if you see, there were so many things cooking up in the social media by different political parties to malign the name of Vijay and TVK. But he had never come up and he had never substantiated his own stand.
But Mr. Nandakumar, he never went to Karur. He never went back there. He says that the police never gave him permission. In fact, he took a whole month later, brought a bunch of those families to Mahabalipuram and met them. Is that what a leader should do? Is that what a responsible political leader should do?
Yeah, because when you are having a political opposition against you, not even allowing you to go and serve the people and the families who has been suffered by this stampede. So he has not stopped with that. You should really appreciate Vijay and TVK that they have called that 41 families to the Chennai, and they have participated in their grief, and also they have adopted the family. They have given a 20 lakh rupee compensation, whereas even the government has given only 10 lakh, and not only the rupee compensation.
No, but the reason
rather he
those
has
people
adopted.
died, sir, the reason those people died is because of poor crowd management. Who was managing the crowd?
No.
Clearly, TVK and their people were poorly managing the crowd. That's why those people died.
No, actually, the crowd management is in the list of it's a legal responsibility, and the legal responsibility lies with the police, district administration. As you have rightly mentioned in the beginning, only the district administration has approved this particular venue, which was not even asked by the TVK party. Actually, they have asked for one lighthouse Roundana, and they have in their initial requisition letter they have given a survey report which they have measured the land, and it was amounting to 120,000 square feet, where 60,000 people can participate freely. But that place was denied
not
by
given.
the district
So
administration.
let me ask Mr.
And they have
Nandakumar.
put purpose-
Let me
they have
ask
put
Mr.
purposely the crowd into the
Kalyanaraman.
Veluswamipuram.
Mr. Kalyanaraman, only Vijay and his people are being called for questioning. What about the commissioner there in Karur? What about the district magistrate there? The people who gave the permission in a place where they had not asked for it, they had asked for a different location where more people could be housed. Instead of that, a tiny street corner was given. Why are those people not being questioned by CBI? Mr. Kalyanaraman.
I think there has been some mistaken identity. They have already been called into CBI headquarters in Delhi. They were also inquired with. They were questioned about why they have done so and so activities, because there has been a huge lapse on the side of the police department, which even I have mentioned on your channel itself during the occurrence of the event, that there has been a conspiracy by DMK to push them into a small place, thereby ensuring stampede. These are all final outcome has to be from the CBI after the inquiry. We can only
But you hold the TVK responsible. You hold Vijay responsible. I have never heard you say that Senthil Balaji was responsible, or the other leaders of DMK there were responsible for what happened.
No, I was on your channel on the first day itself, on the day of occurrence. I was on your channel as well as Times Now, that we have stated it clearly. We defended, in fact, the TVK all through the period. So there is no question about it. We did suspect Senthil Balaji's involvement. Even I have stated it during this thing. But end of the day, they are all just suspicions based on our own understanding of the occurrence. But the final outcome will always obviously be that of the CBI after due inquiry.
Mr.
They have called the
SP,
they have called the
You have this
DSP.
situation where, he's been called for questioning, 6 hours plus of questioning has happened. Now he goes back, he's been asked to come back again at a later date after Pongal. His movie that was supposed to be released for Pongal, it's still not got CBFC certificate. The courts are apprised of the matter. I believe the matter was mentioned before the Chief Justice in the Supreme Court today. Ultimately, either this whole thing is going to backfire on Vijay, or he's being made larger than what he already is. He's already larger than life. Now they are trying to make him even bigger than that, just to give him some political capital ahead of the elections, Mr. Nandakumar.
Yeah. As I earlier said, Mr. Vijay is very much a law-abiding citizen. And even if they call for tomorrow, or even after the Pongal also, if they summon, Vijay will be very happy to go and attend and give all the answers to all the questions. So he doesn't bother about it, because at the end of the day, the truth prevails. So here, the stampede is never caused by the popularity or the person's presence. It is caused by the systemic failure. As you have mentioned, it is a poor crowd management and a poor deployment of police force, and denial of a proper place. They have put it in a very narrow road where there is no exit, proper exit in there. So there is no emergency evacuation space is available. So there is a lot of administrative and procedural failures were there for which the state government is completely responsible.
No, but that's exactly
So-
what I asked Mr. Kalyanaraman. Nobody from the state government seems to be questioned. Only Vijay and his people are being questioned.
Yeah, that is what. Suppose if the political
No, the
parties
state government
try to
has been
corner,
indeed questioned.
if the political parties try to corner Vijay, it will add up value to Vijay and it will add up more political mileage to Vijay. That
Okay.
these political parties are forgetting, because already the public there is a huge crowd is behind Vijay, which is clear cut.
Nandakumar, I
shows that
think
the
I
people
think
are
you should
seeing
use the right word.
as
It
a-
is the
no.
CBI which is inquiring, not the political parties. Please,
No.
we have
I'm
to be very
talking about
careful in what we are addressing.
No,
Whether
I'm
it is
talking about
DMK
the
or
political parties which
BJP who are ruling. No, I'm
not
just telling
BJP
you
I am
because
talking about.
we should have
I'm not
correctness.
talking only about
Yeah.
BJP.
No, we
I'm
should
not
have
talking only
correctness
about
because
BJP.
we are on a national
Even
debate.
even the DMK side, what they say is that the BJP is doing all this
DMK
kind of
has no say in it.
pressurizing
Simple.
practice
DMK
to
has
have
no
an
say in it
alignment
today
with
after
Vijay.
CBI is entry.
Okay, we'll
Yeah,
see.
so
We'll
that
see
is
how
what I
this.
said that,
We'll see how
Vijay
this
is
plays
always
out.
believing in the
Whether this
due
will end
course
up
of
making
law than the
Vijay a
political drama.
martyr, some kind of a political larger-than-life figure, or whether this will actually backfire on him, we'll wait and see. The people of Tamil Nadu will speak in those elections in April and May. Thank you very much, Mr. Nandakumar Kalyanaraman, for joining us. I want to move on from one election to another. This one, local body elections upcoming in Mumbai, and there's been a significant development now. The Maharashtra State Election Commission has imposed a ban on depositing Ladki Bahin scheme funds into the bank accounts of beneficiaries. This comes just a day before polling. Remember, later this week on Thursday, the BMC elections are due, and this money was supposed to go a few days before that in the run-up to the election. Remember, this had become a huge talking point ahead of the state elections as well last year, and now in the run-up to the local body elections, the BMC elections, this had become a big talking point. Eknath Shinde, the Deputy Chief Minister and the former Chief Minister, this was his sort of brainchild, political brainchild. The opposition in the state, from the Shiv Sena, UBT faction, the Congress, they had opposed to what they described as bribery just before the elections, and now the State Election Commission has barred the state government from depositing the Ladki Bahin installment, the installment for the months of December and January, just ahead of the BMC elections later this week. Yasha has more on this. Yasha, any reactions coming in from the various political parties, either from the BJP or the Shinde Sena, who are on one side of this political divide, or from the opposition, which seem to have made a big issue of this, installment just before the elections?
Absolutely, sir. In fact, when we speak of this, the opposition party, the Congress had raised a huge hue and cry, stating that just ahead of the BMC election, there were two installments of the Ladki Bahin which were to be deposited in the accounts of beneficiaries. In the defense of the ruling party, we'd also seen the Chief Minister Devendra Fadnavis state that this was simply a political issue that was being made out of by the opposition party. But in defense, the Congress had said that there have been candidates who've written to the Election Commission asking for this very development to be halted, and that's how there was the Chief Secretary was in fact called before the Election Commission today to give an update about the same. Following which we've seen that now the Election Commission has asked for this very installment to be stopped just one day before the election, because there are 29 municipal corporation elections which are due on the 15th of Jan, and on the 14th, as a part of the Makar Sankranti festival gesture, was where two of the installments were deposited. Now, when we also spoke to several people who've been key to the ruling the Mahayuti, they've said that that Ladki Bahin Yojana is a Yojana which has helped several such women to in fact start their own business, and because the opposition are raising a huge hue and cry over this issue, it is simply showing the insecurity, but the government is only trying to help them. However, as of now, of course, when it comes to Congress, they said this was nothing but a violation of model code of conduct, and which is where this installment should not really be given to the women. It can in fact be deposited as soon as the elections are over, but not before, but not one day before the polling takes place.
Okay, Yasha, we'll leave it at that. Thank you very much. Yasha Kotak there in Mumbai for us. So the Election Commission barring the state from putting the last couple of installments of the Ladki Bahin monies into the beneficiaries' bank accounts. Even as Mumbai inches closer to the high-stakes BMC elections later this week, a familiar yet unsettling script is being dusted off yet again. At the helm of it is MNS chief Raj Thackeray, who's opened up a can of worms with his hateful, mocking caricature of South Indians and North Indians, triggered by BJP leader Annamalai's remark that Mumbai is not just a Maharashtra city, but an international city. Raj Thackeray opened up a barrage of insults. But this is not new, whether it is language vigilantism or threats that are disguised as Marathi pride and street-level thuggery, which is portrayed as sons of the soil rhetoric. The provocation has been calibrated and consistent throughout the history of not just the MNS, but even the early history of the Shiv Sena. Here's what transpired in battleground Mumbai over the last few days. Raj Thackeray has revived his controversial 1960 Shiv Sena slogan originally given by Balasaheb Thackeray, Hatao Lungi Bajao Pungi. Now, this slogan was aimed specifically at BJP leader K. Annamalai, who was campaigning a few days ago in Mumbai. He referred to Mumbai as an international city and not just strictly a city that belongs to Maharashtra. He mocked the Tamil Nadu BJP leader by calling him Rasmalai and questioned his right to speak on Mumbai's affairs, asking what connection does he have with Mumbai. MNS chief also issued a warning to migrants from Uttar Pradesh and Bihar regarding the perceived imposition of Hindi. He said that Hindi is not our language. If you try to impose it, I will kick you. He also characterized the upcoming elections as the last stand for the Marathi Manus, claiming that people from all sides are coming to Maharashtra to snatch away its resources, and added that if Marathis do not unite, then they will be finished. So this is a familiar script that's been dusted up by Raj Thackeray just before elections. Whether or not it will have any purchase, it's up to Mumbaikars to decide on the 15th. But let's listen in to this ongoing war of words, political war of words, which of course has now descended into a degree of nativism.
काल परवाकडे कोणतरी एक तामिळनाडूमधून रसमलाई आली होती. तो सांगतो मुंबईचा आणि म्हणजे महाराष्ट्राचा संबंध काय. तुझा काय संबंध आहे इथे याचा. यांच्यासाठीच माननीय बाळासाहेब बोलले होते हटाव लुंगी आणि बजाव पुंगी. आता नाही दाक्षिणात्य इथे राहतात.
பத்தினி அவமானப்படுத்துறது எனக்கு ஒன்றும் புதுசு இல்லை. தமிழ்நாட்டில் டிஎம்கே அதைத்தான் காலங்காலமாக செய்கிறாங்க. ஆனால் தமிழர்களையே அவமானப்படுத்துகிறாங்க. இந்த லுங்கி கட்டினவனுங்க வேட்டி கட்டினவனுங்க இவனுங்களாம் இப்படி இவனுங்களாம் அப்படி. அதே கூட்டணியில் திராவிட முன்னேற்ற கழகம் இங்கே இருக்கிறாங்க. இதுதான் ஆச்சரியம்.
हमारा वचननामा एक 100% कमिटमेंट है. दूसरे तरफ है एक फेक नामा जहां वो सिर्फ घोटाले पे घोटाले करते आए 25 साल और कोई ब्लूप्रिंट नहीं, कोई विजन प्लान नहीं, एक खोखला पीपीटी प्रेजेंटेशन. हम मुंबई को खड्डे मुक्त के साथ साथ देखेंगे कि आम नागरिक के ऊपर कोई लोड ना हो.
Nothing but very below the belt remarks and cheap politics in the name of divisive nature. Whether Thackeray themselves are not united. They are cat and rats for almost 2 decades. Now, since elections are around the corner in Mumbai, they want to pin a narrative. And this kind of statements is not welcomed by the general public. And this really questions the stature of a person who calls himself as a leader and a politician.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi and German Chancellor Friedrich Merz turned Ahmedabad into a hub of diplomacy as they unveiled a powerhouse India-Germany partnership at the India-Germany CEOs Forum, happening amidst the 75 years of diplomatic ties between Delhi and Berlin and 25 years of the strategic partnership. It spotlights why strengthening the India-Germany partnership matters now more than ever. The day kicked off with a poignant visit to the Sabarmati ashram. Modi and Merz paid floral tributes to Mahatma Gandhi, with Merz, in fact, penning in the guest book that Gandhi's non-violence and dignity are more relevant now than ever before. Next on the agenda was flying kites amid folk dances and the cheers of Har Har Modi at the Sabarmati riverfront. You can see both the Chancellor and the Prime Minister flying the kites there, in which is a traditional celebration during the Makar Sankranti week all across Gujarat. So what are the big takeaways, the key takeaways from the meeting of these two world leaders? Both sides, India and Germany, have announced a joint declaration on defense cooperation, strengthening security and military collaboration. This was also matched by a joint declaration of intent on economic cooperation, reinforcing trade, investment and industrial partnerships. A declaration of intent on building a semiconductor ecosystem was also unveiled, signaling closer cooperation in high-tech manufacturing. India and Germany have also further agreed on a global skills partnership focusing on talent development. Cooperation will also expand into critical minerals, which is a key buzzword across the world right now, including with America, China. This is a key area for energy security and advanced manufacturing. An important people-to-people measure also includes an agreement on visa-free transit for Indian passport holders. The two countries also announced the launch of battery storage working groups supporting clean energy transitions. There will be enhanced technological cooperation in the renewable sector, boosting green innovation. An India-Germany Centre of Excellence will also be established to drive research and collaboration. And finally, German universities have been invited to open campuses in India, marking a significant step in academic cooperation.
चांसलर मर्ज की ये यात्रा एक विशेष समय हो रही है। पिछले वर्ष हमने अपने रणनीतिक साझेदारी के 25 वर्ष पूरे किए और इस वर्ष हम अपने राजनयिक संबंधों के 75 वर्ष भी मना रहे हैं। ये माइलस्टोन्स केवल समय की उपलब्धियां नहीं है, ये हमारी साझा महत्वाकांक्षाओं, परस्पर विश्वास और निरंतर सशक्त होते सहयोग के प्रतीक है। भारत और जर्मनी जैसे देशों की अर्थव्यवस्थाओं के बीच करीबी सहयोग पूरी मानवता के लिए महत्वपूर्ण। 2000 से अधिक जर्मन कंपनियां लंबे समय से भारत में मौजूद है, अवसर खुलेंगे। फ्रेंड्स, भारत और जर्मनी के बीच ऐतिहासिक और गहरे पीपल टू पीपल टाइज हैं।
The world order is changing. The moment we are meeting here, it is increasingly marked by great power politics and thinking in spheres of influence. We have to brace ourselves against these rough winds. We want to deepen our defense industries and the cooperation of our defense industries, and this has strategic significance. We signed groundbreaking memoranda of declaration. One memorandum stipulates the closer cooperation of our defense industries in the field of development and production, and the promotion of innovation and strengthening global supply chains.
Sergio Gore, a close ally of US President Donald Trump, took charge as the new US ambassador to India in New Delhi today. In his first statement, Gore emphasized the strong friendship between Trump and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, saying that real friends can resolve differences. Of course, he was highlighting the importance of Indo-US ties, stating that no partner is more important to the United States than India is. Remember, this amid the long-standing stalemate between India and the US over the purchase of Russian oil and the stalled trade deal. The ambassador's appointment has sparked hopes for improved trade ties and normalized relations between the two countries. He also said that India will be formally invited to be part of a new arrangement called Pax Silica. So what exactly is Pax Silica? It is a US-led strategic initiative aimed to build a secure and innovation-driven silicon supply chain. The partnership focuses on critical minerals, energy inputs, advanced manufacturing, semiconductors, and AI infrastructure, all in an attempt to try and reduce coercive dependencies and protect foundational technologies. It highlights the importance of partnership for both competition and prosperity. This, remember, on the back of China imposing rare earth restrictions, which of course led to massive disruptions in global supply chains. And as a result, America is now promoting this initiative and asking other countries to join in. It was announced by President Trump a couple of months ago. Now, Sergio Gore has confirmed that India will be formally invited as a full member to join Pax Silica next month.
I've traveled all over the world with President Trump, and I can attest that his friendship with Prime Minister Modi is real. The United States and India are bound not just by shared interest, but by a relationship anchored at the highest levels. Real friends can disagree, but always resolve their differences in the end. Last week, our great Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, powerfully stated that this year will be a year of reciprocity. We are raising the standard for diplomacy itself. That means fair trade, mutual respect, and shared security. Both sides continue to actively engage. In fact, the next call on trade will occur tomorrow. Remember, India is the world's largest nation, so it's not an easy task to get this across the finish line, but we are determined to get there. And while trade is very important for our relationship, we will continue to work closely together on other very important areas, such as security, counterterrorism, energy, technology, education, and health. I also want to share with you today a new initiative that the United States launched just last month called Pax Silica. Pax Silica is a US-led strategic initiative to build a secure, prosperous, and innovation-driven silicon supply chain, from critical minerals and energy inputs to advanced manufacturing, semiconductors, AI development, and logistics. Nations that joined last month include Japan, South Korea, the United Kingdom, and Israel. Today, I'm pleased to announce that India will be invited to join this group of nations as a full member next month. As the world adopts new technology, it is essential that India and the United States work hand in hand from the very start of this initiative. No partner is more essential than India.
So will the arrival of the new US ambassador to India, Sergio Gore, help sort of ease out some of the still sticking points as far as the Indo-US trade deal is concerned? Later this week, as early as this week, we're expecting a bill that could raise the tariffs up to 500% to be taken up in the US House of Representatives and in the Senate. But let's go across to Ambassador John Bolton. He's former National Security Advisor in Trump 1.0. Thank you very much, Ambassador Bolton, for speaking with us. So the trade issue seems to be stuck between India and the United States. It's currently at 50%. India is paying the highest tariffs in the world. Where, in your understanding, is it stuck, and what will it take for this issue to be resolved and for a trade agreement to be arrived at?
Right. Well, I think the entire Trump tariff policy is a catastrophic mistake, and I'm hoping that the Supreme Court will rescue us from part of it in the near future if they strike the tariffs down as unconstitutional. I think the worst part of it right now is the 25% kind of add-on for Indian purchases of Russian oil. Now, to be clear, I wish India would buy its oil from someplace other than Russia. And maybe at some point that opportunity will open, and I think the U.S. should help in that regard. But I think that is one obstacle that needs to be considered. The other is obviously the unfair treatment, the disparate treatment. China isn't tariffed for purchasing Russian oil. Pakistan isn't tariffed. But this highlights that Trump thinks primarily in economic terms, and the big geostrategic issues on which I think India and the U.S. really see things in much the same way are lost in the shuffle here. So I hope that the new ambassador can facilitate ways to bring this crisis to a halt, because I don't think it benefits either country in the long term.
I'll come to what he said in his speech today in a second, but you mentioned that if India can start buying less Russian oil and buy from some other source, and we've seen what's happened in Venezuela in the last few weeks, and President Trump has made it very clear that he expects Venezuela to be selling its oil to America, and America will decide who then gets a share of it. Do you think India can look at Venezuelan oil potentially to try and offset some of this pain that's been caused by import of Russian oil?
Well, with oil prices now below $60 a barrel and likely to stay that way, I think the U.S. can work. Venezuela is going to take a long time to get any significant production back, that's for sure. But just as there was a transition when sanctions were put back on Iran, that it made it possible to find alternatives. I think there are alternatives, and it's if that can be facilitated, that's something the U.S. should do.
One of the things that the new ambassador on day one today, and I was there at that event when he gave a brief speech, one of the things he mentioned was India will be formally invited to join Pax Silica, which is a conglomerate of 7 or 8 countries, basically who are interested in the supply chains of rare earths and semiconductors. India was not part of it. Now he says India will be formally invited to be part of it next month. How important do you think this is, both in terms of signaling and in substantive terms?
Well, I think it's important in both. I mean, we've seen China try to use rare earths as leverage over countries whose supply chain depends on that. In a perfect world, these sorts of political considerations wouldn't apply. You could get raw materials from whatever seemed the most economically advantageous. But if China's going to play that way, others around the world really don't have much of an alternative, at least until new sources of some of these minerals open up. So India should be a major player in something like this, and I think from my perspective, it's a very positive development.
What do you think a country like India will be bringing to the table at a time when, like you said, Trump doesn't seem to be thinking about the big geostrategic initiative. So Quad seems to be on the back burner. But at the same time, this is the new initiative that this administration seems to be focused on building semiconductor supply chains and, consistent rare earth supplies, etc. What is it that India can bring in that domain now that the Quad is forgotten about?
Well, I think it's important to understand Trump doesn't think in conceptual terms. He doesn't think in terms of national security strategies. I'll guarantee you he hasn't read the one that they just wrote. He's very transactional. He thinks he understands business. He understands buying and selling commodities and things like real estate. So I think in very concrete terms, talking about places where the two countries can cooperate. For example, in weapon systems, Russia and China are getting closer and closer as the Beijing-Moscow axis develops. China has for many years relied on Russia for high-end, sophisticated weapons technologies. That continues. If anything, their relationship is closer there than before. And I think from India's perspective, given that China is the principal threat, you don't want to be the purchaser of exactly the same technology from Russia and potentially put India in a vulnerable position vis-a-vis China. So that doesn't mean everything has to come from the U.S. India could well develop its own national sources of production and is doing so now. But there's a lot of cooperation in the aerospace and defense field that I think would be worth exploring further.
And one final word, because you mentioned Iran, and there's a lot of interest around what's happening in Iran of late. Do you reckon the United States will intervene in any form or fashion, either militarily or non-militarily, in what's going on in Iran? And do you think that the Ayatollah regime might fall? I mean, this was perhaps the biggest challenge they've seen in decades.
Yeah, look, I think the situation in Iran is very, very delicate at this point. I think the regime is at its weakest point since 1979, not just because of these demonstrations. They reflect enormous economic dissatisfaction, but the young people are dissatisfied, women are dissatisfied, the ethnic groups are dissatisfied. The regime is very weak and could fracture at the top. People said if the U.S. for years and years, if the U.S. attacked Iran's nuclear program, it would turn the Iranian people toward the regime. It would have the opposite effect of what we wanted. There'd be turmoil all over the Middle East. Well, we did attack the nuclear program along with Israel. The people did not turn to the regime because they knew what we were doing. There's not turmoil all over the Middle East as a result. So I think strikes against the Revolutionary Guard Corps and continue the attack on the nuclear and ballistic missile programs would help the opposition. I think we should do more to help the opposition. I think not just in the Middle East, but really worldwide. We'd all be in a safer place if the regime of the Ayatollahs were overthrown.
All right, Ambassador John Bolton, thank you very much for joining us here on News 18. Thank you very much for your time and perspective. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Iran is facing its most dangerous unrest in decades as a sweeping government crackdown on nationwide protests continues. It's been going on for the better part of the last 4 or 5 days now. These demonstrations basically began over economic hardship. The currency suddenly got devalued. A lot of sanctions are in place against Iran. As a result, daily life was becoming very difficult for the Iranian people. It started off as a protest against economic grievances. It's now rapidly evolved into a direct challenge to the authority of Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. And that has raised fears of a wider crisis as violence escalates and international pressure mounts. President Trump, meanwhile, is in a position to take a decision on whether or not he wants to order a military strike in response to the Iranian regime's efforts to try and suppress these protests. Will Trump order military strikes? What comes next for Iran? I decode. severe crackdown is going on in Iran on protesters who are challenging the rule of Supreme Leader. This has led to a sharp rise in the death toll in recent days, even as the casualty numbers are now rising in the hundreds. After 4 straight days of protests, there is simply no sign of any let-up by the Iranian authorities. Despite a complete internet blackout and draconian limits on the usage of phones, in a country that has more than 80 million people, there are now reports that are starting to trickle out of large-scale violence. There are now verified videos of the deaths of protesters and dead bodies being lined up in body bags outside hospitals. The worsening situation in Iran, which began as a protest over economic grievances, represents one of the gravest challenges to the Ayatollah regime since the Islamic Revolution. After initially striking a more sympathetic and conciliatory tone when the demonstrations began, Iran's President Masoud Pezeshkian took a very tough stand in an interview to Iranian state television Sunday. He said while they're working to address the genuine economic grievances of the protesters, but he vowed not to let the rioters destabilize the country. Late Sunday, US President Donald Trump also warned that the United States would intervene if the Iranian government killed peaceful protesters. He also hinted that America might be ready to act. He said there will be hell to pay for Iran if it uses force against innocent and peaceful protesters.
I mean, what they've done is in the past, they've started shooting the hell out of people, and all of a sudden people without any weapons whatsoever are standing there and you have machine guns gunning them down, or they take them to prisons and then hang them and kill them. So they played rough, and I said, if they do that, we're going to hit them very hard. Well, we're going to hit them hard. We're ready to do it. If they do that, we're going to hit them hard. And so far, for the most part, there's been some of it, but for the most part, they haven't. There have been people killed. Some of them, the crowds are so big that some of them have had really, were stomped on. Literally, it was terrible.
Demonstrators started taking to the streets in the end of December, spurred by a sudden plunge in the value of Iran's currency. But those calls quickly broadened to demanding the overthrow of Iran's authoritarian rulers. Over the past few days, the protests have snowballed into a mass movement. It has drawn huge crowds to the streets across over 100 of Iran's major cities. On Sunday, human rights groups began reporting a sharp rise in the death toll, even as various accounts of violent repression broke through. The Oslo-based Iran Human Rights Group raised its toll to 192, while HRNA, which is a rights group that's based in Washington, said that it can confirm the deaths of nearly 500 protesters. As protests grew, senior Iranian officials laid the blame squarely on the United States and on Israel, saying that they are backing the protesters. Iran's military and nuclear facilities were battered in the 12-day war that happened with Israel and the United States last June. The country has been sinking into a severe economic crisis after the reinstatement of American and European sanctions last year.
Unrest and attacks on public places, setting fire to mosques, burning the Book of God, this is clearly a plan by the United States and Israel. The people can see it. This is Israel speaking of humanity, while at the same time inflicting such suffering on human beings.
Donald Trump's warnings have also added to the pressure on Iran. Several American officials have told the media that the US president has been briefed on new options for military strikes inside Iran. Trump has said that the United States is locked and loaded and ready to go if the Iranian government used lethal force against the demonstrators. He's also been briefed on potential military strikes on non-military targets. Trump has not made a final decision yet, but he was seriously considering authorizing a strike in response to the Iranian regime's efforts to suppress the demonstrations. The American president has been presented with a range of options, including strikes on non-military sites in Tehran. Such threats feel particularly potent in the aftermath of American forces capturing Venezuela's longtime president Nicolas Maduro just earlier this month.
The world today stands with your national revolution and admires your courage. In particular, President Trump, as the leader of the free world, has closely observed your bravery and has declared that he is ready to help. Do not abandon the streets. My heart is with you. I know that I will soon be by your side.
One factor in the mass mobilization of the past 4 days in Iran has been the street calls issued by some activist groups and also by Raza Pahlavi, who is the son of the Iranian Shah, the last king, who was deposed in the 1979 Islamic Revolution. Videos from many of the protests show there were chants, there were slogans supporting the Pahlavis, which up until now was anathema, at least in previous Iranian protests in the last decade. These are the most serious protests in the country since 2022, since the killing of Masha Amini and the anti-hijab protests. Amid the growing violence, Pahlavi, who lives in exile in America, has urged the protesters not to abandon the streets. Pahlavi is due to meet Trump later this week in the White House, and so far it's unclear whether Trump will give the go-ahead for military intervention in Iran. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio spoke via phone on Saturday to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel. At the same time, though, American officials are cautious. They say they want to be careful that any military strike by America did not end up having the opposite effect, which is galvanizing the Iranian public to support their government. They also do not want it to trigger a set of retaliatory strikes that could threaten American military and diplomatic personnel in the region. Clearly, President Trump has a fine line to walk. After Venezuela's leader Nicolas Maduro was captured, President Donald Trump is now asserting American dominance in the Western Hemisphere. And this is through reinventing a 200-year-old Monroe Doctrine, adding his own twist to it. Donald Trump calls it the Monroe Doctrine. From Colombia to Cuba, Greenland, the Panama Canal, Trump is hoping to restore America's regional preeminence while at the same time challenging the influence of both China and Russia. But what is this new Monroe Doctrine, and how does it differ from the original Monroe Doctrine, which was founded by the 5th US President, Mr. James Monroe? In 200 years, what has changed and what is now different in Trump's world, in Trump's America? I dig a little deeper. After the fall of Venezuela and the capture of its longtime leader Nicolas Maduro, what comes next? That's the million-dollar question. US President Donald Trump has threatened Colombia with a similar fate as that of Venezuela. He's declared that Cuba was ready to fall. He's once again claimed that Greenland needs to come under American control. Trump's claims, and these expansive claims, offer a glimpse of how emboldened he feels after the very quick capture of Nicolas Maduro. Through his words and his actions, Trump is trying to breathe new life into the Monroe Doctrine, the 1823 foundational document of America's claims over the Western Hemisphere. And now Trump is putting his own imprint, his own stamp on this new strategy. He's calling it the Monroe Doctrine. American dominance in the Western Hemisphere will never be questioned again, Trump announced very loudly a day after Maduro's capture.
Our new national security strategy, American dominance in the Western Hemisphere, will never be questioned again. Won't happen. So just in concluding, for decades, other administrations have neglected or even contributed to these growing security threats in the Western Hemisphere. Under the Trump administration, we are reasserting American power in a very powerful way in our home region. And our home region is very different than it was just a short while ago. The future will be, and we did this in my first term. We had great dominance in my first term, and we have far greater dominance right now. Everyone's coming back to us.
But a more nuanced position about America's role in the Western Hemisphere is described in the newly released National Security Strategy of the Trump administration. The NSS is a document that appears to have been written with American territorial adventurism in mind. A close reading of the NSS, particularly page 15, points to what Trump is thinking about beyond Venezuela, whether it's Colombia, Mexico, Cuba, Greenland, all of these countries which come under the American sphere of influence. The National Security Strategy, called the Trump corollary of Monroe's famous declaration that sought to stop European powers from meddling in the Americas. The Trump corollary asserts a fundamental right to restore American preeminence in the Western Hemisphere and to deny any non-state competitor or non-hemispheric competitor in this case China and Russia, which is basically the only two countries, from getting into a position of amassing forces or other threatening capabilities, or to even own or control strategically vital assets in the Western Hemisphere. Trump has not said whether he claims the Western Hemisphere, and through those claims, China is free to do the same in Asia, which is its hemisphere, or whether Putin can do the same in Europe. The problem with the argument of spheres of influence, which is what Trump and his administration are using, is that every great power can use that same logic to advance its own interests in its own sphere of influence. Putin can justifiably continue his wrecking war in Ukraine, and Xi Jinping can use this excuse to attack Taiwan. While Trump intends to revitalize the Monroe Doctrine, the intent of the doctrine 200 years ago was far different from the situation in America today. While the original Monroe Doctrine was declared by the fifth President of the United States, James Monroe, in 1823, the United States at that time was roughly a country of 10 million people. Today, it's almost 350 million people. The American Navy was limited to a few dozen ships, about 3,000 sailors, and 500 officers. That is less than the size of the force that the Navy used offshore of Venezuela just to oust Maduro. And the context 200 years ago was different as well. Latin American countries were shaking off their distant masters, Spain and Portugal. Monroe and his political allies were worried that European powers would seek to once again make these Latin American countries European colonies. And so the declaration was an effort to block European influence over the Americas. But today, more than 200 years later, Trump has turned the Monroe Doctrine on its head. In a sharp shift of decades of American foreign policy, the Western Hemisphere has now become America's central theater of dominance. President Trump opened his second term with pledges to seize the Panama Canal, the control of Greenland, and to rename the Gulf of Mexico. He's now taken one step further by bombing drug boats from Venezuela and Colombia. He's also extricated a long-serving ruler in one of the largest countries in the region. This stems from President Trump's understanding that you cannot be the preeminent global power if you are not the preeminent regional power. The United States has long viewed Latin America as its own playground, where it has supported military coups, it's propped up dictators, it's conducted covert and overt operations, it's invaded Panama, Nicaragua, and now the latest Venezuela. During the Cold War, there was an American effort to champion capitalism. After all, the Cold War was a fight between capitalism and communism, even if that meant backing dictators in Latin America. After the Cold War, it was about spreading democracy in far-flung places like Afghanistan and Iraq. Those backfired. But now, Trump, with Venezuela, seems to have dropped that fig leaf around democracy. It is nakedly and blatantly about controlling resources. In the case of Venezuela, it's about oil. In the case of Greenland, it is rare earths. Trump's approach appears purely pragmatic and transactional. What is in it for the United States of America?
This is News 18 Network. India's largest news network.
Office in Delhi. Wearing black and black, Vijay entered the CBI office in central Delhi a little past 11 a.m. this morning, and he came out closer to 7 p.m. So 6.5 hours plus of full-on grilling about what was happening in Karur. This was in connection with the Karur stampede that happened back in October, in which 41 people were killed. Clearly, Vijay and his party owe an explanation for what led to the deaths of those innocent people. But the bigger question is, why is this probe happening now? Barely a couple of months left before Tamil Nadu gets into election campaign mode. Does this warrant a criminal inquiry at this stage? We'll also be getting you a number of questions that the CBI has asked Vijay. He has been asked to appear. A new date has not been shared, but it will likely happen after the Pongal celebrations, which of course is the biggest festival in the state. Is this purely political? Is this to try and checkmate Vijay just before the Tamil Nadu elections? Or is this going to have the opposite effect? Is this going to help Vijay play the sympathy card and make his image, his political image, larger than what it already is in the state of Tamil Nadu. So it was a day of action-packed drama in the national capital as the Tamil star was put through the ringer by the CBI, asked all sorts of questions about what happened in Karur and why him and his political party have still not taken responsibility for the deaths of those 41 people. The charges against Vijay paint a picture of serious lapses and questionable conduct in the immediate aftermath of what happened in Karur. First, investigators are looking into unexplained delays and failures in his arrival at the rally venue. Remember, he came a good 6 hours late, and that raised concerns about the preparedness by his organizers, the accountability or the lack of it by the people who were organizing that rally in Karur. Second, there are also allegations of gross negligence and poor crowd management, which may have contributed to the chaos that was seen on the ground. Vijay is also accused of leaving the rally site right after the stampede at a time when leadership and responsibility was most needed. In fact, within an hour or so, he left from Karur, went to the airport and headed back to Chennai. In fact, it took a whole month before he could actually meet the individuals who were affected, the families of the victims. In fact, him and his party claim that they requested the Tamil Nadu police on a number of occasions to try and allow him to travel back to Karur, but they never got the requisite permission.